Welcome to the Single Era Diaries, exploring the journey of a woman who hasn't experienced what it's like to be single in her entire adult life, and pretty much most of her teenage life too. Each episode will navigate the journey of finding a sense of identity, exploring the challenges of co-parenting, finding love of self and healing, all whilst tackling the complexities of the checkered landscape of dating and dating apps, meeting new people, and operating solo in a world that celebrates couples, marriage, and codependency. I am your host, founder of Nascent Media and newly single woman, Jade, and this is the diary of my single era. So, in terms of attachment styles, to start there, do you know your attachment style? Do you know what that is? Because I had never come across the term attachment styles. I'd never heard of that before, not something I was familiar with. And it was only really with entering this era of being single and also researching for the podcast that I even came across this term, because it seemed to be fairly well understood in sort of dating coaching circles, and there's a lot of it out there in terms of psychology as well, because that of course is the practice that digs into this. But I really think that understanding more about who you are and what you're about and how your mind works it's so important, not just when it comes to dating but also when it comes to life. I guess though, when you do find yourself single, as I do, and you're navigating that healing journey, you're taking the time to get to know yourself again, you're taking the time to recalibrate and to individuate, it feels like a really opportune moment to really understand all of the tools that you can in order to present the best version of yourself to the world, particularly if you're, as I am, very hopeful of finding love again. And so the thing with being in a relationship, particularly a long-term relationship, but any relationship, I guess, is that you're somewhat insulated from how your behaviours can be impacting the other person. And that's not to say that they don't have an impact when you're in a relationship. Of course they do. But the difference is you have a level of being comfortable when you're in a relationship. There are things that you would do with a long-term partner that you probably wouldn't do with a new partner. I think that's very, very natural. But what that does do is it gives you a little bit of a false sense of security of how you're going to be received when you start interacting and engaging with new people. And let's face it, when it comes to understanding ourselves, life is hectic. Understanding ourselves and doing the work on ourselves isn't always priority, particularly if you're in a relationship. And this can often be one of the contributing factors as to why relationships fail, because somewhere along the line you become so comfortable that you stop putting the work in. Tony Robbins has this quote about, if you behave at the end of your relationship like you are at the beginning, then there will be no end. And that's so true. Like, the level of effort and conscientiousness and focus and dedication and attention to detail that you put into yourself and to the other person when you first start embarking on a relationship, if you were to do that the whole way through, the relationship would continue. And I guess that's a point of reflection. It's a point of introspection and reflection, particularly for me, finding myself single. I do believe that taking the time to do the work and to understand yourself is really critical. I really got into personal development the last few years. I would probably say since around 2018, 2019. And so that aside, I still hadn't come across attachment style. So there's no judgment here if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't know anything about attachment styles. Like, I have no idea. I've never come across this term before. It's all good because we're going to dig into it. But what I wanted to share before I talk about attachment styles is a little bit about my solo date. I guess as I continue to be off the dating apps, because I really frankly I'm not into them. I don't believe that they can facilitate an effective connection, just the very way in which these apps are designed. They're not designed to facilitate connection, they're designed to make money from you. And so for that reason, I'm not on the apps, which does present me with a little bit of a challenge in meeting people and dating people, because I have no means of connecting with people to be invited out on dates. And the dates that I have been invited out on before I deleted the apps, I declined. So I'm in a bit of a sticky wicket situation. So naturally, I turned to the internet. Specifically, I turned to TikTok, which is currently my advisory service. It is my search engine. It is my go-to place for entertainment. It's a little like flicking through 90s cable TV with all of the channel options that just entertain you. The algorithm is fire. I highly recommend. But I was on TikTok, and there are a lot of dating coaches and relationship coaches on there, of course. And one of the women that I happen to follow shared that if you're looking to move beyond the dating apps, that it's worthwhile going out in real life, actually going out outside of your house, outside of your neighborhood, outside of your world, outside of your workplace, and actually going out into the world to meet with people. Which sounds like an alien concept, I think, to so many, particularly given that these apps really have a stronghold on the dating world. But it seemed like a really sensible idea. The caveat, however, to this piece of advice specifically was with a view to meeting what is known in the dating world as being a high value man or high value woman. And high value equates to secure attachment. So it's somebody that's very secure in themselves, very confident in self. They have a strong sense of knowing, strong sense of comfort within themselves. And as a result of that, they have a life that is aligned with that. So it's not necessarily about materialism, but it is about somebody that is in their knowing and in alignment with who they are. And the advice that was given was to go to upmarket places where high value people tend to go out. So I figured, you know what, why not? And I figured one of the things that I haven't done in this last few years is to really go out. I mean, of course we've had a pandemic, but I have been in the most part a bit of a hermit. I've not really gone out, certainly not in the way that I used to. When I lived in the city, I was an absolute party girl. I worked hard, I partied hard, I played hard. That hasn't been the case since I became a mum. So I thought, why not? Why not go out and take myself out on a date? And so I did just that. On Friday, I just took the bull by the horns, and I got a great dress, some great shoes, looked good, felt good. I drove because I'm not really into drinking, particularly when I'm in a situation where I'm going to be meeting new people. It's something that I have really adopted in my career and my business life. I don't drink at these events and stuff because I like to feel switched on. So I drove so that I wouldn't drink, and it was good. I actually had a really great time. I loved being on my own in the city. The great thing about the city that I went to is I used to live there. I spent 5 years living in the city centre. I have worked in and out of that city for a number of years. It just felt very comfortable and homely. And I went to a bar that I'm really familiar with, really comfortable with, felt very safe. And I think that is definitely what I would say to anybody that is contemplating going out on a solo date. Make sure that you're choosing somewhere that you are going to feel safe and comfortable. Make sure that you know the environment, you know the space, you're comfortable with where you're going to be parking, you feel that there won't be any danger that you'll be putting. I mean, these things are really critical considerations. And so I did all of that, and I was having a really lovely time. I was catching up with my friend who has just flown over to the US. I was having a chat with some other people on my messenger. I was just listening to the music, enjoying the DJ, having a very thoroughly chilled and lovely evening. And it was all going really well until I went on to another bar where, again, I was having a really lovely evening, had a chat with the DJs, had a chat with some of the bar people. Some guys introduced themselves to me that were sat next to me in the bar. It was all very relaxed and lovely. And I could kind of feel, you know, when you're somewhere and you can feel like people are looking at you, like the heat of eyes boring into your brain. I felt that, and I ignored it because that's my vibe. I'm like, I just have this like, please leave me alone. Like, which is not conducive to meeting people necessarily, but it is definitely the vibe that I give off. It's just like, I just want to enjoy the music. So I was sat there very happily, kind of like boxing along, and one of the guys came over and he invited me to their table to join him and his friends for a drink, which is absolutely fine. And in the name of research for this podcast and in the name of journalism, I said yes. And I left my really lovely place where I was having a lovely time and I went and joined these guys at their table. I think this could have worked out in a very different way for somebody that wasn't me. Here's the issue that I have. I am very secure and I'm very confident and comfortable with what I bring to the table. And so in the words of Shania Twain, like, that don't impress me much. There's a lot that doesn't impress me. And these guys, honestly, I don't know whether it was with a view to try and impress me or this is just the way that they operate, but they were very braggy about what they have and what they do and very materialistic. And I just found it thoroughly boring because fundamentally, I don't care what somebody has or what somebody does per se. Like, I'm interested in your life. I'm interested in what your values are and what you think about the world. But do I care if, for example, you have a penthouse or you own a cricket club? Like, I'm not interested in that. And so I really found that to be quite dull. And it did mean that I actually left my solo date sooner than I had intended because I was just so thoroughly bored. And what I haven't yet grasped how to do in that situation is how to extract myself from that situation and just go back to where I was. I really wanted to say, okay, well, it's been lovely chatting with you. I'm just going to go back over to my table now and sit on my own. I obviously didn't want to be rude, but equally, I was just so thoroughly bored. So I left shortly after that. And so as a solo date, as it went, I guess it was a good experience and I'll definitely do it again. I'm going to do a lot more solo dates. I think it's really great for the soul to just go out and just to experience the world on your own without being distracted by friends or family or partners or what have you. I mean, it's a bit of a departure for me to be out at night on my own, but it was really good. So I'll definitely do that again. But what I would say is it's really important to not only choose somewhere that feels safe to you, but to also choose somewhere where you think the vibe is going to be matched with your vibe. So I know that next time I go on a solo date, I won't go to the area of the city that I went to, which, yes, it's upmarket. Yes, there are lovely restaurants and bars. Yes, I'd like to go. I go there when I work from the city in co-working spaces, but it's not the kind of place that I want to go on a night out because I recognise that the kind of characters that will go there will probably be those sort of braggy, egoic, this is what I have, this is what I do, braggy, 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 which just doesn't impress me. I'm sure it's great for a lot of other people, but it's definitely not for me. And so thinking about how all of that went, I was really interested in how to sort of pull that back to how attachment styles work, because I guess whatever our attachment is doesn't just show up in our relationships, it shows up for us in life. If you haven't heard of attachment styles before, there are 4 key attachment styles. So we've got sort of avoidant, which is like high avoidance but relatively low anxiety. We've got secure, which is low avoidance and low anxiety. Secure is, I would describe as being kind of like the holy grail of where you want to get to really in terms of attachment styles. There's fearful avoidant, which is like high avoidance and high anxiety. And then there's anxious, which is low avoidance, but a clue in the title, high anxiety. And so of those 4 attachment styles, I would absolutely qualify myself as being in the secure attachment space. This is very much the holy grail, I feel, of where even if you're in one of the other attachment styles, ideally you'd be looking to identify ways that you can move to a more secure attachment, because I just feel that having that will allow you to show up far better for yourself, but also far better in the relationship dynamics that you're embarking on. It really gets down to being like able to form secure relationships that are loving with another person. I mean, there's a lot of trust involved. If you're securely attached, you can trust others and you can be trusted. You can be trusted to give love, to receive love. You can be close to others. You're not afraid of intimacy, but equally, you're not concerned, nor do you feel panicked if your partner or significant other needs time and space away from you. Like, you're very comfortable with that sort of that gap and that space. You're essentially able to be really independent, but not to the extent that you're detached, but independent without becoming totally dependent on that significant other. And there's stats say that there's around, say, 56%. So there's more than half of adults have a secure attachment style. It's really considered the most healthy of all of the attachment styles for relationships. And it's important to add that the other attachment styles aren't necessarily not secure. It's just that they show up in a way that isn't as secure as a secure attachment style. So then the next attachment style, which I feel like I've had moments in my life where I have been in that space, but have done and continue to do the work to move away from it, is an anxious attachment style. Now, an anxious attachment style is really marked by feeling fearful about being abandoned, like that abandonment wound that I think we all have, whether we're secure or not, but it's a very prevalent feeling in those that have an anxious attachment style. People who have that style tend to be really quite insecure in their relationships. They worry that their partner will leave them. They're really keen to have validation from that significant other or that partner. And to have an anxious attachment style is largely associated with being sort of clingy or needy, getting anxious if, like, your significant other doesn't text you back fast enough, feeling like that person doesn't care or isn't interested in you if they're not communicating with you on a constant basis. It's also known as anxious preoccupied attachment, and it aligns with this sort of style of wanting to be sort of reassured and sort of comforted and not really being left to yourself, essentially. And, that can be quite challenging if you have that style of attachment and you're moving into the dating world. I can well imagine that would present some challenges, because here are the things that I'm noticing already within the dating world. It's that there's no official rules. There are rules that are put out there, but they aren't official. They are malleable, and you have to be agile in order to be able to move with them. And if you are going into new dynamics with people that you barely know, and you're too clingy or too needy or too communicative, expecting too much or pushing too much, that can really come off as a massive, red flag. I mean, it is a red flag. I have personally experienced that on the other side, where it's like it's too much, too many messages, too many voice notes, too frequent. And it feels a bit red flaggy, because there's this kind of balance area that you have to sort of move through to where you get to that place. And it's understanding that when you have literally perhaps not even met the person, or you've met the person maybe once or twice, you're not there yet where you need to be texting like, good morning, good night. Like, that's way too much too soon. So that is something to be conscious of, that if you're in the initial stages of a relationship starting to develop and you are feeling stressed, worried, anxious that somebody's not getting back to you straight away, I would definitely say avoid the internet, because there's these dating gurus that have all of these really bizarre pieces of advice that are like, if you haven't been text back within 2 hours, they're not into you. If they haven't texted you back after 3 days, they're not into you. I think there's so much nuance with that situation that if you are anxious and you're reading into that and you're drawing conclusions about it, you really are, I think, opening yourself up to the potential of missing out on something that could develop to be something really good, but you don't get there because you're too sort of expectant of what that communication style is going to be from the outset. The next attachment style is avoidant attachment. And this is, it's insecure attachment again, but it's really marked by the fear of kind of the opposite way. It's like a fear of intimacy. People who have an avoidant attachment style tend to have trouble in allowing themselves to get close to others. They have challenges in trusting others in relationship because they ultimately don't believe that they can open themselves up safely or that their needs are going to be met in a relationship. Now, here's a little word of, I guess, acknowledgement for if you are exiting a relationship where there has been indiscretions, infidelity, and that has, of course, naturally impacted the way that you feel like you are able to trust again, that it's really easy to slip into a space where you become somewhat avoidant. And I am going to hold my hands up here and say that I feel that risk for me to some extent, because I do not want to be hurt right now. I definitely don't want to be hurt again in the way that I have just been hurt coming out of my relationship. And so I can well believe that there will be others out there that will feel exactly the same way. They have this concern about, well, look, if I show up as my authentic self, or if I open myself up too soon, or if I lean into what this feeling that I think I'm having about this other person is, then I'm going to be hurt. And all of those feelings and emotions are completely valid. Having that sense of, I don't want to be hurt again after having been hurt or having your trust broken is a completely natural response, I think. But it's just being able to manage that so that you're continuing to open yourself up and continuing to be open to receiving love, but without feeling so fearful that you're going to be hurt again that you miss out on the joy of what that connection could be. Now, I have to say I'm too soon into this whole kind of dating out in the world again process to really be able to fully articulate as to whether I'm experiencing that currently. But I do know that I am, and this is maybe why I'm not on the dating apps right now, and this is maybe why I'm taking myself out on dates rather than allowing other people to take me out on dates. I'm really I need to heal. I need the scab to have fully healed and to have come off naturally, as opposed to the wound is still there, the scab is only just healing. Like, I really don't want to put myself in a position of being hurt just yet. And I think that is a natural thing as well. So for anybody that is as new to the sort of the single landscape as I myself am, which is sort of, kind of around 6 months in, it's still very raw and it's still very soon. So I think having that reticence is absolutely natural. The thing with avoidant attachment is that it can also show up as being sort of dismissive. It tends to show up in a way where you as an individual, you kind of feel like you're being coddled or suffocated by the other person. And there's a preference to be wholly independent and to rely on yourself, as opposed to open yourself up to sort of sharing and being able to receive that love. And that's definitely something that I am at risk of doing, I think. So there's space, I think, with all of these attachment styles to kind of, if you imagine a quadrant with those 4 attachment styles in, it's very possible to sort of be in one and to sort of err towards another. And it will, of course, fluctuate as well as you move throughout that journey of being single and on your own and getting to grips with all of that. The last key attachment style of that 4 is a fearful, avoidant attachment style. And this one is quite rare. It's a combination of both anxious and avoidant attachment styles. And people who have this style are fearful, avoidant. They really want attention and they want love, but they also want to avoid it. Like, it's a very conflicting style of attachment. There's almost these polar opposites that are like, banging, of like the reluctance to develop a close relationship, but at the same time, they really want to feel love as well. I mean, the other name that this attachment style is known as is a disorganized attachment style, because it is quite disorganized and it is quite inconsistent. And I think, again, if you're embarking on the dating world, and it's all very well and good understanding what your attachment style is, but again, of course, you don't know the person that you're dealing with, you're engaging with, that you're interacting with, the person that you might, even think that there's the potential for something to go somewhere. It's unlikely that you're going to have an awareness of what this person's attachment style is. And I don't know how comfortable I would feel having a conversation with somebody really early doors about, well, what's your attachment style? I don't know how that would land with me. And so equally, I don't know how appropriate that would be to sort of ask that kind of question when just getting started in that dating. But what that does is, if everybody in the dating world isn't doing the work to understand what their attachment style is, you are always at the risk of encountering somebody that could be one of the attachment styles that is not secure. And if you experience that, then that does have the potential to cause some kind of heart injury. Because, and this is one of the things that I'm personally really concerned about, because I'm getting to understand more about me and how I'm showing up in this space, or how I intend to show up in this space. I'm really getting to grips with the things that I need to work on, and the issues and the trauma from my past relationship, and how to move through that in order to show up really authentically and well to whomever it is that I'm, potentially, ideally, hopefully, wishfully going to end up with. I'm aware of all of that, but I have no visibility of what somebody else is. And I think you can perhaps deduce as to what somebody's attachment style is. And you can no doubt do that as you get into a relationship. But to try and do that right from the outset is a really tall order. And so I think the advice that I would give on this is to get to know yourself, especially when you are new to being single. I think there is absolutely a risk for so very many people, and this is another reason why I came off the apps, because I found that there were so very many wounded people, and it was so evident in the way that they showed up. It was evident in their communications. It was obvious in the way that they shared very early on, like first couple of communications, like the whole dialogue of what happened in their previous relationship. And I think that might work for some people, but for me personally, I don't necessarily want to be exposed to all of that so soon. I feel like getting to know yourself and the other person as individuals, regardless or irrespective of the additional baggage, which we all have. But I feel like getting to open up to that without that nuance at the outset is really key. And so I find, or have found, that those attachment styles, or the knowing of that, for those that are relatively new to the dating scene, I feel like if you're so wounded because you've only recently come out of a relationship, you haven't had the time to do the work and to be introspective and to reflect on how you feel and to allow those emotions to sort of move through you, that you're in a place that you can be showing up in an attachment style that isn't necessarily you. I feel that in that quadrant, those 4 attachment styles, that it's very easy to shift and to move and to change dependent on where you are in your own personal healing journey. It's completely understandable to be more anxious if you've just come out of a relationship that's perhaps abusive, or it didn't end well, it was acrimonious, or there were challenges around sort of intimacy or trust issues. There's all of this baggage that we, inevitably, invariably as humans, particularly as we grow older and more mature, we have more baggage that we can take with us. But the key piece of advice I feel here is to take the time to work through that baggage, like sort through your luggage before you go out to find another partner. Do the work. And that's not to say that you don't have to take a huge amount of time to heal and fix yourself, because we as humans fundamentally heal and repair by being in commune with others. Like, we have to be with other people in order to heal. That's part of the healing journey. But taking the time to understand who you are and what you're about, and are you in an anxious attachment style because you've just got out of a relationship where there was infidelity? Are you avoidant right now because you feel like you need to put those walls up, like you can't let people in? You've been hurt in the past. Like, have you worked through that? Because what ideally you're looking to do when you enter the world of dating is that everybody has taken the time to heal and to do the work and then come into the dating pool. What I found, and this is as much for myself as observing it in others, that if you haven't done the work, it's fairly obvious. There's either a clinginess there, or there's a neediness there, or there's a demandingness there. There's a level of acute wanting it to be like a relationship before it's been like a relationship. And I definitely had that happen the first time round that I was on the dating apps. And that was the reason why I came off after 72 hours, because the people that I had opened up to match with, it was like, good morning, good evening, good night. It was like, whoa, we are not in a relationship right now. We're not even dating. I haven't even met you. Like, I really believe that communication is absolutely vital and essential. I think having that sort of undercurrent drumbeat of comms to keep some level of connection there between two people that haven't met and don't yet know each other is absolutely vital. It doesn't have to be every day, but I think, kind of like checking in, touching base in business speak is absolutely perfect. But I do feel that if you aren't aware of those attachment styles and you have a wound that you haven't healed, that you could show up in a way that could sabotage you. It could potentially remove the attraction, because there's nothing more of a turn off than somebody being like, it feeling like they're coming at you too fast, or they're feeling like they're being too distant. Like, there's this sort of like magnetic sort of push and pull between two people that are attracted to each other. And let's face it, when you're meeting on dating apps, or even when you're meeting out in real life, like, that initial connection is based on attraction. It's based on whether you are attracted to that person. Now, the attraction will come from physical attraction, it will come from the style of communication, it will come from, I believe very much that it comes from something deeper, like, there's no coincidences, we don't meet people by accident, all of that good stuff. But that attraction is it's on this sort of tenuous precipice to begin with, where you just need to allow it to develop into something that is slightly stronger, less able to break so easily. I kind of view it as being kind of like a spider web thread to begin with. Like, that connection between you both is like, it's so fine, and what you're really looking to do is to kind of give it the best chance that it can to sort of develop into a thread, and then from a thread into something, something stronger that can withstand a little bit more. And you're looking to build that up over time. It's not going to happen immediately. Without knowing what your attachment style is and without working on that, you're exposing yourself to the risk of doing something that could potentially thwart something that could be really beautiful. So that's what I'm going to be continuing to work on, because I am conscious that I'm doing things at the moment that could be described as slightly avoidant. I mean, the apps are dead to me. And so my experience of going out into the world to go and you can't really make a judgment call based on one occasion. But I will say that if I bump into any more guys that want to be completely egotistical and just tell me what they own and what they do, then there's a likelihood that I'll be single forever, because I'm just not into that. So I probably need to go somewhere else next time. In fact, I'm planning to go somewhere else next time. But how are your attachment styles showing up for you? I would really love to hear your feedback if any of this that I've spoken about today has resonated, because it was really insightful for me to kind of get to grips with this stuff. So hopefully it's been somewhat helpful. That is a wrap for today. And I really encourage everybody listening to go on a solo date. Go on a solo date. do that, be comfortable with it, get comfortable with being on your own and being in your own skin, because the single era is a beautiful time. It is a time to be embraced. It is a time where you get to know yourself and to reconnect with yourself. And that is so valuable and so important. And I really want everybody listening to thoroughly enjoy that. So thank you very much for listening. This has been the Single Era Diaries. If you liked what you listened to on the show today, share it with another single person, kick it around on the internet. That's how podcasts grow. It would be so very cool for these thoughts and snippets to reach people that are on a similar journey to myself. Long live the single era. Please date safely, and peace out. The Single Era Diaries is produced and distributed by Nascent Media and executive produced by me, Jade Graham. Podcasts grow by being liked and shared. So if you enjoyed today's show, then please be sure to like and share with a friend who you think will enjoy the show too. Subscribe, and if you have a moment to rate and review wherever it is that you listen to your podcast, that would be super appreciated too. Thank you for listening, and peace out.